Khanun reaches Kyushu, Dora remains strong, and Lan becomes a typhoon on tonight's tropical weather bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical weather bulletin for August 9th. Well, for the second time this week we had some technical difficulties on last night's bulletin, but we're back now and hopefully that's been rectified, and there's two hurricane strength storms active, and Khanun, which is washing ashore along the coast of Kyushu right now in this active Pacific moment here in the current season. Day 70 of hurricane season in the Atlantic though, and it is the odd one out with nothing happening here right now, no areas of interest even within the next 7 days. So the Atlantic is lazing, but there is still lots more for the season to come yet. In the Eastern Pacific, it's day 87 of hurricane season, and along with Dora there in the Central Pacific cruising as a Category 3, we have 3 other areas of interest, although only one of them will probably take seriously in the next 7 days, that 30% in the middle, which already has a little low pressure system starting to develop there. Khanun still has an enormous eye and structure as it moves along the western coast of Kyushu. Lan already looking decent and has reached typhoon status pretty quickly, heading towards the Ogasawara Islands, so Japanese interests could be affected with both of these storms. No areas of interest in the Indian Ocean right now. Things are still quiet here, but a little bit of monsoonal activity occurring across India and over the Himalayas. So let's take a look at Khanun first of all. That was a great start. Typhoon warnings in effect for the Amami Islands, Kagoshima, coastal Kumamoto, Nagasaki, including outlying islands. Gale advisory for the rest of Kyushu and beyond there towards Honshu and the whole of Shikoku as well. Just 93 kilometers from Akurazaki right now and 132 kilometers from Kagoshima. We're giving it winds of 65 miles per hour and an estimated central pressure of around 977 millibars, I think it was. Gale advisory is also now in effect for Jeju and the coast of South Korea, moving up towards the east. Here's Lan right now. There's no warnings in effect for the islands to its west, but it is only 550 kilometers from Ogasawara, and it will be heading that way over the next few days. 577 from Iwajima, 1112 from Aogashima, 1377 from Chiba, and 1400 from Tokyo. The storm could head up towards that direction, but the forecast is fairly uncertain. We're giving this storm winds of 75 miles per hour and an estimated pressure, I think it was around 977 as well. Here's Dora right now, a Category 3, still a strong storm, really pulling its weight across the Central Pacific. It is 892 kilometers south of Hawaii, 1095 from Honolulu, 1318 from Johnston Atoll, which you can see towards the northwest of the image there. It should pass south, 2699 from Midway, and 3818 from Wake Island, which it could reach there as a weak tropical storm about to die off. That's in the Western Pacific, so we'll be watching out for Dora's progress. Satellite imagery then, first of all looking at Khanun and its progress, and you can see it's still moving very, very slowly, and it's the eastern side right now that has the majority of the worst weather, with lots of rainfall and, as you can see, large amounts of convection there. The western band's looking very lackluster, and of course there's a massive gaping hole there on the western side of that eye, and so we've gone with around 65 miles per hour for its current intensity. Here's radar imagery and still some impressive rainfall returns showing there across the hillier areas of Kyushu as this storm draws towards the north-northwest. It surely will be a significant rainmaker. Here's Lan on the same scale, and you can see how it's been developing, wrapping up quite nicely there. I think it's decent for typhoon status, and it looks like we could be seeing it get stronger fairly soon. We expect that the storm will peak probably close to major typhoon status, but maybe not quite. And here is Dora, looking fascinating once again with a beautiful looking eye, although it's not as deep as it used to be, and the cloud tops aren't quite as good. Still great on visible, no doubt, but on the infrared, here it is, still got good cloud tops, but the eye has filled up a little bit on those latest frames. But really can't fault the storm's structure and appearance. Once again, Dora has proven to us all that it is very resilient. Not quite as small as it used to be, I don't think. I think it's slightly larger, but it's still, from on hurricane terms, pretty small. Moving still just south of due west. Sea surface temperatures in the eastern Pacific right now are still warm, getting up above 30 degrees Celsius off the coast of Mexico. Central Pacific, where Dora is, it's around 28 degrees Celsius, maybe a little bit lower. The Atlantic, piping hot still, of course, with no real weather to take advantage of all of those really warm sea surface temperatures. Certainly, if a tropical cyclone found its way into the Gulf of Mexico, it would have a field day with those conditions. Of course, it's not just sea surface temperatures though. We got to look out for wind shear and dry air, which can impede storms as well. Western Pacific, really warm slots there near China and near the Mariana Islands, ironically where Dora's headed towards. Looking good for Lan, a massive amount of upwelling near Okinawa from Khanun. Temperatures though from all of these storms probably around 28 to 30 degrees Celsius. Indian Ocean looking good as well in the Bay of Bengal, and in the eastern part of the Arabian Sea, western part looking pretty cool. Very warm around the United Arab Emirates, 34 degrees Celsius there. Southwest Indian Ocean is obviously cool in its off-season there, a little warm area of 26 degrees Celsius there. And the Australian region as well, look at the Gulf of Carpentaria, really starting to cool now, and off into the Coral Sea. South Pacific, around Fiji, looking pretty cool there as well, 25 to 26 degrees Celsius. Looking at the anomalies, massive cold spot from where Khanun has been perched for so long. Lan is looking okay, slightly above average there. In the eastern Pacific, Dora is actually over slightly below average as well, but in the eastern part of the Eastpac it's still well above average. The Atlantic, of course, is above average pretty much across the board, getting up towards 3 degrees above average in one or two spots, but Western Pacific is around average there, not too much above. Oceanic heat content is really large in the Atlantic, mainly in the Caribbean Sea. Lots and lots of energy there for any potential cyclones. Eastern Pacific still looking okay off the coast of Mexico. We saw Eugene tried to pull a fast one off the coast of Baja California Sur, but for that next system maybe we could be looking at some fuel there. Western Pacific, it's going to build back after Khanun, but that might take a little while. So let's take a look at the GFS model, and it's delayed our update a little bit here because it was slow to process this evening, but this is what we're expecting over the next 5 days in the Eastern Pacific. You can see one or two little areas there that try to develop, although it doesn't look like they really have very much luck. There's one there that just forms quite quickly further towards the east, and it doesn't look like it manages to get anywhere within that 5-day period. Right at the end of that period though, you'll see one or two little flickers, especially right towards the east there. You might have missed it. Here is Dora though, moving westwards. GFS underestimates this storm by quite a lot at its initialization point. It's looking more likely now that it will retain tropical storm status past the international date line. So it begs the question really, how long can this storm last? Because it is defying all expectations at the moment and has been doing for quite some time, at least model expectations, and of course the original NHC forecast, which only called for a category 2. And there it is, moving into the West Pacific, moving over Wake Island towards the end of that loop. Here is the Western Pacific. There's Khanun moving into South Korea, where there's still a substantial chance of dangerous winds there. That's why we're code orange. And there's Lan continuing towards Japan. A strong system, maybe not so much in the winds there. GFS has category 2 by the looks of things, but the pressures at some points get into the 940s according to the model run. So maybe category 2, category 3, but it could be a very deep system and could provide a significant impact to Japan if it keeps going like that. Looking at rainfall expectations in the next 7 days, it looks like this. So large areas, 1 or 2 spots there over South Korea, getting up above 10 inches, 250 millimeters. Also a few spots in Kyushu doing that as well. The Ogasawara Islands look like they could be getting extreme amounts of rainfall, above 500 millimeters possible if land stalls for a little bit, like is depicted there, and then it eventually moves towards Japan. So eventually on day 7 we could be looking at over 12 inches of rain there on Japan as well, the middle part of the country towards Tokyo, but not quite by day 7. That's over 300 millimeters and extending into North Korea there as well, similar amounts, and even up into Russia near Vladivostok. Will Khanun make it up there? Big question. Into the longer range, to day 5 to 10, this is where the East Pacific starts to light up. There's that first area of interest starting to light up on the western side there, and then this second one that really starts to get going around day 7, day 8, and becomes a substantial hurricane hugging the coast of Mexico, and then eventually moving, looks like slightly inland towards the very end of that loop on day 10. So the system on the left hand side eventually becomes a tropical storm, doesn't last very long. The one on the east becomes a much stronger hurricane, quite a small one, and is interfering with the coast of Mexico. Here is Lan, day 5 to 10, there it is, making landfall in Japan and then sweeping up towards the north. What's left of Dora still visible on the right hand side of the image there, a small signature, eventually gets pulled up by a frontal system and will get dragged up there, an enormous system forming right at the end of that 10-day period in the wake of all of this current activity. I don't know whether that will happen, but August, who knows? It reminds me a little bit of Crosa, that one, if you remember. It was extremely large, that one. Yes. You can take a look at the Force 13 merch store. Scan the barcode and that will take you straight to it, and you can take a look at our full season and individual storm animations on request. That's one of the things we do, and of course our clothing lines and our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirt. Dora is Hone in sheep's clothing, I think. In Silly Range, this system in the Eastern Pacific, it survives a landfall there and just clips the southern tip of Baja California and continues off there for a little bit. It survives a little bit longer, then it finally dies off over those cold SSTs out towards the west of the peninsula. Maybe a little disturbance coming in behind that, but not much else in the Silly Range there. And once again, we're not showing anything in the Atlantic for the Silly Range, but you might just see a little system around southern Florida there if you just look on the right that tries to develop right at the end. And in the Western Pacific, what on earth is this? This is a gigantic system. Is that larger than Tip? I'm not sure, not in the tropical storm force winds at least, but there it is, moving towards Taiwan, clipping it in the end as a typhoon, and then another enormous system tries to form behind it, gradually moving towards the west. My goodness. I doubt the validity of all of this that's going on in this Silly Range, and I guess that's why we call it that. Well, coming up in just 4 weeks' time, I'd like to announce that my Eastern Tour is on its way, the Force 13 Eastern Tour. I'll be visiting all of these locations on those dates, so if you are in the area, it would be great for you to come along and we can geek out on Force 13 nonsense for a few hours. I don't know. Anyways, you can talk about all of that and more on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13 for tropical weather and general weather chat with other members from all around the world. Lovely. Well, on this day, it was August 9th, 1976, when we saw a strong Hurricane Belle reaching its peak intensity, Category 3 major hurricane, and then it shot up towards the north and struck the US East Coast. Thankfully, it weakened a lot before it arrived, but it still packed a punch. Typhoon Billy was also at Category 3 status, moving in towards Taiwan, was just about to, I think, weaken, I can't remember now. Hyacinth was on its way up in the Eastern Pacific, Category 1, I think it got to Category 2, and we had Gwen, which was on its way out after peaking only as a moderate tropical storm. Well then, back to today, we are code orange. The next name in the Atlantic now is Emily. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Fernanda, and in the Central Pacific, of course, it is still, would you believe it, Hone. Dora doesn't count. In the Western Pacific, our next name now is Saola. In the North Indian Ocean, it's Tej. course, we've been waiting for that one for quite a bit, but the Western Pacific is starting to get through some of those names now. In the Southern Hemisphere, coming up the Southern Hemisphere seasons, Jasper's the next name in Australia, Alvaro will start us off in the Southwest Indian Ocean, and Lola will be next in the South Pacific. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. Hopefully, technology permitting, we'll be back again tomorrow night.